Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division 2 video. Today I'm going to be covering hopefully the first of many competitive games in Steel Division 2. This tournament is the Steel Division Throwback tournament. The rules were that you can only use the Back to War DLC divisions, and then the final will be played on Steel Division Normandy 44. I'm going to be joined by Primus Pilus for this cast. Make sure to check out his Twitch channel at twitch.tv/metagamingtv. Also, if you'd like to catch any of my own streams live, make sure to go follow me at twitch.tv/VulcanHDGaming. In this video, we're going to be covering the game between Herr Robert and DuroSVK in round 2, upper bracket, of the tournament. On the Soviet side, Herr Robert's going to be using the 3rd Armoured, and on the Axis side, DuroSVK is going to be using the 21st Panzer. I'm joined here by Primus, who is going to be co-casting with me. What do you think about these divisions?
Hey Vulcan, so my thinking on these divisions is that the 3rd Armored Division, I think, has a lot of power in its flexibility, specifically in its armored component, you could say. The Shermans plus their jumbo support gives them a lot of flexibility in both or in early phases as well as later phases. However, I think if the 21st Panzer Division, at least in the open ground that we can see on this map, which is quite prominent, if the 21st Panzer Division can get enough time to deploy its Tiger II tanks, I think that's going to give the 3rd Armored Division of Herr Robert a run for their money.
Yeah, absolutely. The 3rd Armoured, since obviously they've been nerfed, they only have that one card of Calliope. It'll be interesting to see if they come in at the start, if there will only be like 1 in Phase A, and there might be like 2 in Phase B. And also the same goes for the 21st Panzer as well with the King Tigers, whether or not there's going to be 1 in Phase A or whether he's going to wait and then bring in more in Phase B. But considering they're both Vanguard, I expect to see those pieces come in early.
Agreed. Just because of how I think the multiplayer meta works out in 1v1 matches, especially for Steel Division 2, it would not be a surprise to see those 2 units come out. Specifically for the Axis, specifically for the Axis in regards to the Tiger II, just how much impact it has on the field.
Yeah, if we could take a quick look at the deployment, it looks like Duro on the right-hand side. At the bottom, he is going to be deploying a couple of Pak 38s. He's got the Panzer Grens coming in there, just a light defense on the bottom side, and on the top side, a much more concentrated push from Duro. He's got the 2 M4s, bunch of Pioneers, Panzer IV going to be following that up. No King Tiger in sight just yet. 2 more Panzer IV Gs, 2 more Pioneers. That's 5 Pioneers in total on the top side coming in with the half-tracks, and then he's got the Panzer Grens and MG42s and stuff going really fast into the town with those Opel Blitz and so on. What are we seeing on the 3rd Armoured side?
So on the 3rd Armored side, it's a very interesting choice that Herr Robert's making. They've decided to drop the at least a single jumbo in the southern section to counter Duro's light defensive deployment. However, one of the jumbos, or the second jumbo that Herr Robert deployed, is seemingly going into the center. It's interesting that Herr Robert didn't use the jumbos as the spearhead of the attack, but instead has chosen to use them in a more, shall we say, maybe an auxiliary or support role, or maybe it's a way to probe the defenses of the Axis. It's really hard to say what Herr Robert's going to do with these 2 very key 3rd Armored units, especially in this early stage of the game.
Yeah, on the top side, it looks like he's just spread out a bunch of infantry. He's got all those flamethrowers in position. There's not actually a massive concentration from Herr Robert. Like you say, he's kind of got the jumbos spread out a bit. On the bottom side, if Duro's patient, might be able to find a side shot with one of the Pak 38s, but one of the Pak 38s actually ended up going onto the hill with the Panzer gun, so it's incredibly spread out, much more than I actually thought on the bottom side, whilst this very concentrated push comes through the town with those 3-star Panzer IV Gs assisted by the battery Führer there.
Yes, indeed. Clearly, Duro's trying to make a serious play for both these 2 northern villages, one on that hill across the river and one in the valley, clearly Duros trying to go for a more maybe aggressive style, or they're taking the initiative and trying to put pressure on Herr Robert, whereas Herr Robert has been more or less positioning defensively, you could say, or maybe preparing to bring in the Calliopes or maybe a couple more jumbos. Hard to say.
Yeah, well, Herr Robert's just brought in an M7, so it looks like that's going to be his focus, using the corrected shot from that artillery piece. Meanwhile, Herr Robert's going to be looking for the strafing run with the P-47 after it dumped its rockets onto the Panzer IV G, forcing that back for the time being. I'm a little bit concerned about Herr Robert's strategy here, just because when you do spread out, it does leave a lot of assets like unused. And so, actually, he is going to be moving the jumbo towards that town now. So he can definitely use that to clean up a lot of these Panzer IVs that would otherwise be an issue for his infantry due to their multiple machine guns.
Yeah, this is something that I've seen with Herr Robert in multiple games throughout several tournaments, is that Herr Robert usually starts out relatively spread out with some concentration in an area, and I've seen sort of like these big, heavy units, or these star units, you could say, like the jumbos, being committed for a concentrated defense, you could say. And maybe Herr Robert is banking on deploying a more general defense with the capability of flexible repositioning. It seems like that's the case, at least in this map.
Yeah, I can understand that, but when you're using like Vanguard, I think it's very important that you have like a strategy from the start as to where you're going to push. But a very important crew kill on the top side. The Panzer IV Führer does get crew killed by the AT gun that was in the forest there, but both of the Shermans have died on that top side, on the side of Herr Robert, and his infantry is getting slaughtered. So the map is just opening wide open, with these flags now being captured as the salient pushes up. There is 3 more M4A1s on the way. You're gonna have to see if they can challenge the captured M4 of Duro, but there's also now a King Tiger working its way on top of that hill.
Yeah, this is a very interesting engagement, because you'd think that, for example, the Shermans that Herr Robert brought up in that northern section of the map, not the ones that just came in, the ones that were defeated by the Panzer IVs and Duros assaulting troops. It's interesting that in that engagement, the Shermans ended up losing, even though they seem to be the kings of the close range brawl. And now it'll be very interesting to see, since that engagement in the north, I think, was definitely in favor of Duro. But it remains to be seen, will they be able to bring in enough reinforcements to stop the counterattack from Herr Robert's armored push coming in with the 3 Shermans. And if the Tiger II can get in there, I think at relatively close range, Duro will be able to block Herr Robert's push. But it seems that the Tiger II is out of position. How do you think Duro would be able to respond in this area, or in this situation?
Well, the King Tiger was doing an okay job of trying to shut down the jumbo. It forced it behind the church, and then the bomber came in with the cluster munitions, so the jumbo's gone now. There was also a significant kill on the side of Duro towards Herr Robert with the P-47 kill after he brought in the 2 Gepards. On the current patch, the A is very strong frontally towards enemy aircraft, so he's managed to get on top of that. The King Tiger there taking quite a bit of punishment from the M7s, and that's just going to pin it down in place for the time being and prevent it from being a threat towards these M4s. I think Herr Robert's just trying to buy himself time to get these M4s into position, then he can push back up the hill towards this crew-killed Panzer IV. There is, however, the M4 on the side of Duro that's still sitting there waiting, but Duro is definitely panicking about this push, bringing in 2 Pak-38s towards that top side.
Yeah, I'm wondering if those Pak-38s are going to be enough, and will there be enough good terrain for them to be positioned in to be able to take out the Shermans? Because I've noticed that a lot of players bring in anti-tank guns at really short ranges, which seems to be an effective way of countering pushes, or countering the counterattack, so to speak. Instead of using anti-tank guns maybe more conservatively or at range, I suppose Duro is just trying to maximize the use, especially of the penetration against the Shermans, since the Pak-38 at long ranges will struggle against the Sherman armor.
Yeah, so the Pak-38s, I think a lot of the reason people use AT guns at close range is because they don't want to rely on APCR, which only has 1 damage. So when they use the standard AP shells, it has 5 damage, and therefore you're a lot more likely to like kill in one shot, or get a critical like Spalling or something like that, which would do like extra damage to the tank, and therefore it would only take like 2 shots from the AT gun to actually get the kill. So I think that's why they're used in this close range environment. However, I think Duro is going to have to be very careful of the infantry assisting these M4s right now, because that could be an easy way for Herr Robert to clean up these AT guns. However, they aren't moving ahead of the tanks. The M4s are currently pushing first, which might be quite a big mistake here from Herr Robert. I think they were just trying to chase down that M4 though.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting engagement happening down in the south, kind of a skirmish between Duro's newly brought in anti-tank guns to shore up any defense, and it seems that Duro's trying to knock out Herr Robert's jumbo that's been placed all the way down in the south there. Obviously, Duro hasn't brought in anything heavy enough to take out the jumbo, but it's a nice move, I think, that Duro's showing to keep Herr Robert on their toes, to expect an attack in different directions.
Yeah, I think that was probably on an efficient short order, and it probably fired at the jumbo when it showed side armor, and then obviously the engagement ensued after that. Pak-38 did manage to clean up the second M4 there. The first one got taken out by the Pak-38 on the top side. Pak-38 did actually die trying to get into the trees there as well, so 3 Pak-38s were invested to shut down the 2 M4s that were there. Also the cluster bomber came in, but completely whiffed. We see the MGs starting to help clean up the infantry on the bottom side of the top town, and the Panzer 4G is now pushing through as well. This is a very weak area for Herr Robert, but if he can take back control of the hill a little, he can get these M4s to shoot down onto this engagement and maybe save the day.
Yeah, I think also Herr Robert has been using the M7 priests quite well, the M7 self-propelled artillery in the back. So even though maybe it may seem that Herr Robert has a relatively weak center, but I think to some extent it's a delaying action supported by the artillery that Herr Robert uses quite well.
Yeah, you say that, but I'm kind of concerned about what he's delaying for. You know, moving into phase B, he's going to probably have access to his M4A176s, since we haven't seen any in phase A yet. However, Duro in phase B is going to have access to probably more King Tigers, so the more King Tigers that Duro can have on the field at the same time, the harder it's going to get for Herr Robert throughout the game, I feel, because then the King Tigers can start covering each other, whereas like when there's obviously only one on the field, they get isolated quite easily and then taken care of. But yeah, the AT gun that was set to ambush the Panzer 4G down in the town did end up getting pretty much just got blown up by an artillery shot. The AT gun was supposed to get that kill, but yeah, the King Tiger dealt with the AT gun across the way, and now apparently the Panzer 4 goes down to the artillery shell.
Yeah, speaking of Phase B just hit right now, and we see Herr Robert bringing in their first M4A1 76mm Sherman tank. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to use it. Are they going to use it sort of more similarly to how the Shermans are typically used, in sort of like a close-range brawl engagement, or will the 76 be used at a longer range to maybe try to pick off some of the armored cars that Duro has been using, or maybe get a lucky flank shot on the Tiger too?
Yeah, I think the 76s always work best at like really short range, like because they don't rely on APCR and they have the 130 AP base. It's pretty strong, and so even up against the King Tigers like front armor of 180 mils, I think it can actually still penetrate at like 100 meters, you know, like at like minimum range. I think it gets its maximum penetration at about the 500 meter range, so it'd probably be sitting on about 40-50%, which is actually pretty decent against the King Tiger. And the King Tiger is going to take a lot longer to aim than the M4A1, so you can definitely like peek in and out of cover and try and find that kill. But there's going to be an M4 just going down, that poor M4 getting obliterated by that Königsdegger.
Now, a really good point there about the Shermans that close range is again where they excel at. If Herr Robert isn't able to deal with Duro's Tiger 2 there, or King Tiger, what do you think are Herr Robert's options in dealing with it?
So he could eventually bring in a Calliope, obviously, and try and pin it down that way. He's got a lot of artillery, so he could just pin it. And since there's only one at the moment, that would be an easy way to neutralize it and then push it with the Shermans at the same time to try and shut it down. There isn't any infantry on the top side of Duro here which has AT weapons, so he's relying purely on Panzer grens that don't have AT. And they're not even vetted, so it's probably for availability purposes. But since we're now into Phase B, it does surprise me that with a Vanguard division you wouldn't like up-vet some of your Phase B infantry in 1v1s to make sure that they have a bit more of an advantage.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting development there, or interesting choice by Duro. Another thing that I'd like to point out, sort of slightly to the south of the main engagement, all the way up in the north, in that central village there, we talked about Herr Robert, delaying Duro's infantry and questioning for what purpose was Herr Robert was doing it. I think Herr Robert has bought themselves a little bit more time, especially in the center here, because there was only a single squad of, I think it was heavy flamethrowers there, and they held down basically what was it, like 3 squads of Panzergrens as well as Pioneers as well. Even though Herr Robert hasn't committed any more resources there, I think maybe Duro's fear of pushing into a village, which is sort of where the Allies are really good at in urban combat. I think Herr Robert did a really good job sort of relying on Duro's maybe conservative psychology in that area specifically.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the infantry certainly held longer than I expected it to, but I think it mainly came down to the artillery support that came in to slow the infantry and force them back for the short amount of time. Obviously, the kills of the Panzer IV certainly helped slow things down, but either side of the that town there where the infantry is pushing through, there has been kills onto the support weapons that were up on the hills, so it's a lot less defended than it was until obviously these armoured rifles have just arrived to help things out. I'm surprised to see that Herr Robert did manage to get a foothold back onto the top side. He's just building up again another M4 to add to the mix, so he's going to have 3 standard M4s, one with the 76mm, and I think he's just waiting for his time to push through that top side.
Agreed. And I think we just saw... Did we just see the Tiger 2 go down to artillery?
Looks like it. Zoom in as the puffs of smoke go up.
Wow.
Another lovely kill from the artillery there, yeah.
Incredible. Herr Robert's been doing a great job with their artillery, and Duro, I think, has been struggling to keep up with counter-battering using the captured Soviet 122mm howitzers. An interesting choice from Herr Robert is that they've taken 2-star vetted priests, and I think that's been giving Herr Robert a lot of flexibility in using that self-propelled art. Normally I've seen, really good counter battery there. Normally I've seen players use unvetted mortars, for example, to do what Herr Robert's doing with the priest.
Yeah, the priests are a really nice choice, but yeah, that was a lovely snipe from the 122mm straight into the top of that priest there, getting his own back for the King Tiger, although I think I'd rather have a King Tiger still on the field at this point.
Definitely.
The 232 is now coming into the top side to help suppress any infantry, but there's only 2 tanks here up against the 4 tanks of Herr Robert. The engineers, they're going to be trading, I guess, with the pioneers, but the pioneers, they've been pinned on the bottom side. If the engineers can get there in time, then the Panzergrens will be having problems, although there goes the captured M4, that's going to go down, and Herr Robert's in an even more dominating position, but the Ju-88 cluster bomber is coming in. I have to see how effective that is. 2 M4s are currently sitting right on top of each other. Is he going to be able to find the kill with this?
One of the back top.
Oh, he got both of them. Lovely stuff. Ju-88 might get shot down for that. But his P-47's getting a bit too big for its boots, though, flying right over enemy territory. Might suffer because of it.
Let's see, will that be it? Ooh, big kill, paying
Big
for those
kills
two Sherman.
indeed. Focke-Wulf 190 coming round for the kill. That P-47 is going to have to fly back over AA. So this is probably a very dead P-47 with the state of AA right now.
Yeah, and also if that Focke-Wulf gets a chance to shoot, yep, down goes the P-47. Not only is AA extremely powerful, the Focke-Wulf 190 A8 variant is also an extremely powerful fighter for the Axis. Several bursts from its 4, I think, 20mm cannons downs almost any airplane. So keep for anyone who's thinking of including fighters, keep your eyes open for Focke-Wulf 190 A8.
We have the engagement going on the top side. The SPW-231 managed to actually blow up entirely.
Oh my god!
The M4 in the side armor there. It was forced back by the engagement. That's going to be a gun jam on the 231 that's neutralized. The transmission damage though on the M4A176 is really irritating because Duro has a lot of infantry, and that's going to definitely give Herr Robert some anxiety as his own infantry that was supporting his tanks has now died. And you can see the Salient pushing back towards that flag. This is an incredibly close game here. We've got still 12-12 on the flags. Herr Robert with slightly less tickets, but we've got a push coming in on the bottom side. King Tiger has arrived, supported by the Panzer IV, to provide some veterancy. He's going to be making that push now, trying to grab that flag in the open. It's quite a long way to go, but we'll have to see if Duro can make it down there.
Indeed. Question for you, Vulcan, is that so Duro, playing a armored division, decided to go up into sort of a more urbanized, close-range kind of brawling engagement up in that northern section of the map. Why do you think Duro chose to do that rather than going for maybe a more aggressive or tank-heavy southern strategy? What do you think was going through Duro's mind?
I think with the 21st, you're very much more reliant on the Panzer IVs in the early game as opposed to like the big heavy tanks like the King Tiger. We did see a King Tiger relatively early, but not like right from the start. So the Panzer IVs plus like the Pioneers are often something that you'd bring in early to try and gain close range like supremacy. And so I think that suited the town engagement quite well. Also, the 3rd Armoured does suffer from a severe lack of infantry availability. So depending on how Herr Robert built his division, you know, he might only have like 1 or 2 cards of infantry in phase A. So that's something that's quite easy to exploit with pretty much any division against them. So the power of Herr Robert really comes down to the close range engagements from the M4s and making sure that your M4s really support the infantry properly. But with the Panzer IVs there, they can trade relatively evenly, and we saw that early on. But now, obviously, moving later into the game, he's going to want to try and exploit the open with his King Tiger.
Right, as we can see that Tiger 2's zoning out that Jumbo. Jumbos are excellent at zoning out, you could say, most German heavy armor, but in this particular matchup, I think the Jumbo is asking for way too much, and I don't think will last very long to that Tiger 2.
Yeah, well, the King Tiger's kind of getting held up here by the fact that the armoured rifles are sat out in the open. It's just kind of sat there firing at it rather than rolling on. This King Tiger should really be looking for the engagements onto the armour. Otherwise, it's just going to be really static and, well, I was going to say susceptible to artillery, and I see the rockets coming in from the Calliope. I don't think it will kill. I mean, it might. If all of the missiles just come in on target, it might do, but I think Herr Robert, sorry, is going to just be using like half of the rockets there. He only fired like 20 of them out of the 60, so a third of them, just to make sure that it starts falling back, and then he can have his Jumbo ride forwards again and start dealing with a lot of the infantry that's actually supporting it.
Yeah. Now that the Tiger 2's pinned down, we can see Herr Robert moving up the damaged Jumbo here. The Jumbo is probably going to aim to take out that Panzer IV Führer, the captain tank there, and to maintain pressure on that Tiger 2, also to negate its accuracy bonus, because that's the one thing the Tiger 2 can really benefit from next to a commander unit or leader unit, is to make sure that every shot on that Tiger 2 counts.
Yeah, so another 20 rockets being used on the Panzer IV now. King Tiger is recovering very quickly though, and that has 60 base accuracy. This jumbo is going to have to be quite careful, although the King Tiger again just using more ammunition on the armoured rifles. The infantry engagement on the very bottom side did go in the favour of Duro just on that little hill. But in the centre, cheeky push from Duro is actually putting pressure onto the flag there, and Duro is currently sitting 14 to 10 as he puts influence over the two flags in the centre.
Yeah, what do you think Herr Robert could do here to either retake the initiative or come back from this rather serious loss now? Duro's basically pushing, as you said, in the center and in the south there. What do you think Herr Robert's option?
So we've seen one King Tiger in Phase A, and we saw a King Tiger come out in Phase B. There's only 2 King Tiger cards, so that means that Duro has 3 King Tigers in total. So if he can shut down the King Tigers, that will be a very simple way for Herr Robert, well, I say simple, it will be like a much easier way to come back after the fact. So like if the King Tigers are dealt with, then the mass of armor from the third will likely get the job done. It's just a matter of finding the flank onto the King Tiger. So in my opinion, like Herr Robert should probably try and push back through the middle. He does have the 2 jumbos heading that direction. Bring in like an M4 A176 on both the mid and bottom side, and then look for like an interesting engagement onto the King Tiger with the assistance of the Calliope, because obviously he has that to just pin any tanks that he needs in a short amount of time.
Right, I completely agree with you there. And it seems that Herr Robert, at this stage of the game, interestingly, with the lowest amount of income for the Vanguard deck, is starting to, I guess, formulate a more coherent plan to attack through the center again, using the jumbos to again zone out the Panzer IV C that's just been crew panicked in the center there. This is going to allow Herr Robert to basically reclaim the central hill or the center area. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we do see a build-up of tanks once again on the top side. The M4s that were previously killed have been now replaced, and the Pack 38 that was tucked away in the very, very top side forest has now been cleaned up. That's probably what transmission damaged both those M4s. So there's a massive armor advantage up there, and again a limited amount of infantry with AT. We do see like a couple of Panzergrens there with AT, but you know, engineers can move forwards and hopefully deal with them. We do see some more counter battery coming in from the 122, so you can, if we hover over them and press shift, we can see that they are trying to target the mortar carriers. The long tom at the back of the map has also been pinned for the time being. The Panzer IV though and King Tiger back online. They are no longer falling back, and Pack 43 is actually going to be joining the fun on that bottom side. I guess probably heading to around about where those Panzergrens are sitting on the hill. But this definitely needs more infantry. He needs to get rid of these armoured rifles in the open. He does finally do so, and that's going to give him a little bit more breathing room to just move forwards. Like ideally, I would have liked to have seen him maybe turn off the HE sooner so that he could have just gone and targeted the jumbo. But he's given time for Herr Robert to get this M1 gun, the 2-star M1 gun on return fire, to get into position, and that's looking for the ambush there if the King Tiger gets too far up.
Right. What do you think in overall terms? Do you think Duro has been trying to go for an early victory and Herr Robert is now trying to go for a late game victory? Or do you think Duro is also, you could say, playing Herr Robert's game of sort of a long-term build and then win through attrition?
I think like at the start, I think Duro was definitely trying to get very aggressive in that town. He was trying to secure the 2 far objectives that Herr Robert currently controls up there. And he nearly did, you know, he nearly managed to hold on to those, but then obviously eventually got pushed back. The investment from artillery from Herr Robert really slowed the game down. So I think for like Herr Robert, his strategy, like we saw him spread out a lot as well. It seemed as though he wanted to see where Duro was going to invest his forces, and then like maybe try and make a counterplay in Phase B. And to a certain extent, he's done a lot of damage, and now he's just kind of building up. Like Herr Robert has a lot more sort of opportunity in the late game than Duro does, because Duro's already invested like a lot of his stuff already in the top side of this map. Like a lot of the Panzer IVs, the M4s have all gone. The King Tiger obviously died up there, so there's one King Tiger left as potentially to support the one on the bottom side, and both really look to be suffering on economy. It's just like Herr Robert has way more on the map right now.
Right, right. And also, given enough time, even Herr Robert's relatively low income will allow them to build more troops than Duro, just because I think on average the US units are relatively cheap and efficient, whereas the Axis, or at least for the 21st Panzer Division, a lot of their units are generally more expensive. So, for example, their infantry, the Panzer IVs have been buffed slightly in one of the latest patches, where they're actually slightly cheaper than Sherman's. But it's just that it'll be interesting to see if Duro has enough Panzer IVs to be able to counter a potential. Ooh, wow, that was a big loss there.
That was a massive shot coming in. I think that was the M1 gun there. Found the side shot just about onto the King Tiger. That was nuts. So that's going to be the second King Tiger down. And, well, I really hope that he didn't bring two, like, one card Phase A King Tigers and actually brought a Phase B King Tiger card, because otherwise there's no more King Tigers left.
Yeah, I think if the Tiger 2s or King Tigers are, if they're definitely down, I think the Panzer IVs barely be able to hold on against the Shermans, because now there's nothing to counter the Jumbos aside from occasional Pak 43s. In fact, the Pak 43 that Duro brought into the southern section just got taken down, I think, by the Jumbo there. So I think at this point, this is spelling the doom of Duro.
Yeah, indeed. I think it was pinned down initially by the Calliope, and then the Jumbo finished it off. The Pak 43 on that bottom side, just out in the open, so easy to see. They have such bad stealth. There was no way that was going to get any kills, especially with the amount of artillery that Herr Robert has on the map. And yeah, it's just a matter of time, I think, until Herr Robert sees his opportunity here and actually makes an aggressive play, because I feel like, especially in the center, like, he's got two Jumbos. I mean, we can always see, like, that there is nothing there, right? That's something that us as casters kind of sometimes take for granted. But at the same time, you got a unit of armored rifles supported by two Jumbos. Just give it an attack move order, see what pops up, and then you know, you got two Jumbos. Like, what's going to kill a Jumbo at this point? You killed a Pak 43, you killed two King Tigers. These Panzer IVs really don't have much threat against the Jumbo because of the 190 front arm, and you can see that Panzer IV just pinging off the front. So there's always opportunities to be found. It's just whether or not Herr Robert starts looking for them.
Right. Another thing I'll definitely say that was in favor of Herr Robert, two things. The first thing is really good artillery play. Herr Robert has been sort of taking this patient play style and just using the artillery to delay the enemy, to take out units. And the second thing related to Herr Robert's artillery usage is incredible luck. I've noticed that we saw that first Tiger 2 get downed by some artillery. I also noticed that there are a couple of Panzer IVs that Duro had in the center to control the central village there, above that, or above the hill, sort of in that valley there. And they were taken out both by artillery and the Jumbos that Herr Robert brought into the center there. So really good job on Herr Robert, but also really good luck on Herr Robert's.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I would say that, like, when you arty something that much, especially the King Tiger, if you look at, like, the location, that place is flooded with, like, craters. Like, there are so many craters there. Like, it's only so much luck when you put that much, like, artillery towards it. And also, in Steel Division 2, like, units have, like, hidden health stat, and so, like, if artillery shells are going off nearby, they will take damage over time, and then eventually a nearby shell will blow them up. So if you're doing it enough, unless you get, like, really lucky, you will eventually kill a tank if you RT enough. And I think that's just what Herr Robert has done. Or transmission destroyer onto the M4A1, but the M4A1 replies with a bailout on the top side there, and that is not an engagement that Duro would like to see. Or new King Tiger on the bottom side.
Yeah, so clearly we have so Duro decided to go with the two Tiger twos in Phase B for
Yep.
sure. I think definitely good for them. What I was gonna say about the northern section here, I think Herr Robert is slowly finding their engagement. They've been able to sneak some armored rifles way up in the north there and claim a victory point here. And unless Duro can answer this, I think that Herr Robert will be able to claim this northern.
Yeah, so we see the 122 mils there with the Lorraines. They managed to actually kill off that M4 that got a transmission destroyed there. What a sad fate for an absolute champion. The Pioneers and Panzergrenz, again, no AT, so the M4s can just go forwards as they like. The armoured LMGs on the hill there, I'd like to see them move out of the way of that MG fire. It seems a bit unnecessary. But the Panzergrenz are going to be opening up, and that shows a Panzerfaust, so yeah, the M21 mortar carrier immediately targeting that on the top side with corrected shot. That's going to be tough.
Of course. What do you think is the reason for Duro relying so heavily on infantry, like Panzergrenz with no AT? What do you think was going through Duro's planning there in constructing their deck?
It mainly comes down to availability and cost. So the Panzergrenz with the Panzerfaust, they cost 35 points, and the standard, the Panzergrenz only cost 30 points, but you get, like, for example, in Phase A you get 9 Panzergrenz, and in Phase in Phase A you get 9 Panzergrenz without Panzerfaust and only 6 with. So it's quite a large difference, like especially early on. So that's where the reliance for Panzergrenz comes from. But against the 3rd Armoured, like if he tailored his division specifically for the 3rd Armoured, then we'd probably see a lot more Panzerfaust, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just like where he's built it previously, and hasn't necessarily catered it towards this particular matchup.
Right. Again, we're seeing Herr Robert artillery incredibly well with both the long toms and the Calliopes, again forcing that Tiger 2 all the way in the back. So you'd think that as soon as the Tiger 2 comes in, it's basically game, set, and match in that sector. But Herr Robert's been really keen and very attentive to using artillery to pin down armor.
Yeah, I think that second King Tiger on the bottom side should have come in whilst the other one was still alive. He had plenty of time to bring in a second King Tiger, and then that sort of neutralizes a lot of the problems that the initial King Tiger was having. So when you've only got one King Tiger on its own, this was a big mistake people used to make in Normandy 44 as well, is they think it's like an indestructible beast, right? But it does have its weaknesses, and especially side armor is one of them. And if it can't face in all directions at once, yes, using them on the edge of the map at the bottom side is the best place, because you can sort of dictate where the edge of the map is, and therefore can protect your, say, left flank. But when there's only one, it's still going to be able to be hit from 2 sides, whereas if you have 2, you can cover both of those sides at the same time, and you could have, for example, had a King Tiger on the hill where the Pack 43 was, instead of it being a Pack 43, which is a lot more, you know, likely to get taken out by a tank. So yeah, I think Duro kind of missed his opportunity to really exploit the use of King Tigers down on that bottom side, and has been punished for it throughout the game.
I see. What do you think that comes from? Is it maybe Duro's inexperience in using the 21st Panzer, or maybe quote-unquote believing in the myth of the Tiger 2, the fact that it's indestructible kind of thing? What do you think?
I don't think Duro is like falling obviously for the myth. I think it's more like a fact that he thinks like the King Tiger is going to be okay, and he's got a Panzer IV with it, right? And that's just like, it's going to be enough. And also the fact that like Herr Robert has been putting a lot of pressure elsewhere, so we can see that Duro is still investing in more and more Panzer IVHs for the top side, and they just keep coming in, they keep getting killed, because there's just way more M4s than there is Panzer IVs. And therefore I think like Duro didn't necessarily have the points to invest into another King Tiger on the bottom side sooner, although in my opinion maybe he should have sacrificed some ground in order to save for a second, because otherwise they're just, like, in my opinion, they're just never going to be effective on their own, because they do become instant targets for artillery, for airstrikes, basically everything you can think of. They are literally, like, somebody sees a King Tiger they're going to do everything they can to destroy it. It's just something that people do in these games.
Yes, indeed. That's something to keep in mind for anyone who is playing as a 21st Panzer Division, is that the strengths that are present in the 21st Panzer Division are also basically big painted targets on your back, and whoever will be playing as your opponent will be, as Vulcan said, seeking any opportunity here. But my question to you, Vulcan, here is... So Duro's been relying a lot on these Panzer IV-Hs, sort of like one-star vetted Panzer IV-Hs against these M4s, and clearly the Panzer IVs are not liking this engagement here. Generally speaking, we've been seeing more Panzer IVs dying to Shermans or M4 Shermans. What do you think? How do you think Duro should be able to? What methods do you think Duro should bring in to counter M4? Or maybe what are some units that could support the Panzer IVs for better close range?
I think the Panzer IVs are still the best choice because they do have like a better traverse on their turret than the Panzer IV Gs, for example. Like the Panzer IV Hs are a good choice. But I see that, like, obviously Duro's brought them in at 1-star veterancy. There's this common thing going around at the moment in Steel Division 2 where everyone says, oh, you need to bring in Panzer IVs at least 1-star vet because then you can make them 3 stars, and like at 3-star veterancy, the Panzer IVs are like incredibly strong, really good snipers. But you can see that Duro isn't really exploiting that. You know, he's got them coming in at 1-star veterancy, but his battery Führer is out of position. He doesn't have a commander, and therefore he's not really getting himself 3-star Panzer IVs. And if he could get 3-star Panzer IVs, then you'd pretty much never see these Panzer IVs miss, and they're going to be just one-popping these M4s left, right and centre. Now it has got to a point where the 2 Panzer IVs managed to kill off, I think he traded 1 Panzer IV for 2 M4s, and so he might be able to get back a little bit of a numbers advantage here if he finds another kill. You see again the Panzer IV-H there, brilliant aiming time, does manage to get the one-shot ammo explosion onto the M4. So that's the sort of engagements you want to be looking for, because again the Panzer IV-H has a fantastic aim time. It's just the command, the battery Führer here, needs to move up with those forces and give that extra veterancy so that he can guarantee more of those kills.
I see. Do you think, given sort of Duro's playstyle, or maybe some of the micro mistakes that we've been noticing, you know, leaders or captains out of position, would it maybe have been better for Duro or more wise to bring in 2-star Panzer IVs so that Duro wouldn't have to rely on network?
I think availability cost at 2-star is like just a little bit too much to consider for the most part, and that's a big problem. So now 1-star is always safe because at least 2-star, they're still good. It's just, I don't think Duro, the same way that he couldn't really probably afford a second King Tiger for the bottom sooner, can't really afford a commander right now. So he's having that issue as well. Like the attrition is affecting Duro a lot worse than it is Herr Robert right now. And again, Herr Robert still has like a bunch of units, although in the centre, these jumbos, what are they doing? They're just tanking shots from these Panzer IV-Hs, and the Pak 43 is in position, going to find the kill there. They've just been set there. That one's on crew. That one's crew killed as well. Both the jumbos just neutralised. The GMC supply is hoping to fix that up in time, but I'm not too sure about that. The Pak 43 going to get line of sight shortly.
Yeah. Speaking to sort of availability for Duro here, it's interesting that Duro has been solely focusing on Panzer IV, and we know that the 21st Panzer does come in with quite a lot of Panzer IV. Not just the H variant; they also have the G variant. Do you think it's just ooh? Big
There goes another one.
There. Oh my God!
Not again.
Yeah,
same fate.
Oh. that AT gun needs a pat on the back. Wow, that was shocking. Where was I? So, do you think maybe Duro is not using all resources, or maybe it's a wise commitment not to use sort of the worse Panzer IV variant?
I think that Panzer IV-H is always a better choice in my opinion. I really don't get on well with the Panzer 4Gs. I mean, that's more of a personal preference from my perspective. The Panzer 4Gs are great at longer range engagements. That's just the way I see it. Like a 3-star Panzer 4G sitting on top of a hill can do a lot of damage, but then the Panzer 4Hs are a lot better for like the closer range engagements. Are also a little bit more versatile because they get that better side armor. But yeah, that King Tiger on the bottom side there, I was looking at it and I saw like the jumbos being killed by the King Tiger. So Duro trying to make the most of that, but suffers the same fate twice. I mean, fool me once, right? And then it's just like that M1 gun is king because it has like the AP shells. I'm not even sure if it was that got the kill because I click on it and it's got 60 AP shells still. I don't know how many they come in with, but
I think it's like 60. Yeah,
it might be 65.
And I think it was that one. Yeah, I think it was that M1 gun getting that shot because it's in such a perfect position, and Duro didn't commit any resources to maybe flushing it out like artillery or smoking it or whatnot. Maybe it's just that Duro's finally getting pressured in so many different areas that they're not able to remember all the key threats that Herr Robert has basically laid down for trapping the Tiger 2s with those really lucky flank shots.
Yeah, if he didn't see the first King Tiger die, then he wouldn't have known about the AT gun, because it probably would have stayed hidden when it got the kill, because it was the first shot. But the Jumbo here did manage to just snipe another Panzer IV on the hill, so we see that there's only one Panzer IV left. There were 4 a second ago. We looked down at the bottom side for a second, and now there's only 1 left, and there's an abundance of tanks coming out from Herr Robert. We've got the M4A1s and the M4A176s, you've got the Jumbo up there, you've got the Command. It's just it's a massive wave of armor coming towards Duro, and he's going to have to be very careful about that, especially with the Panzer IV being pushed back by this continued fantastic artillery support.
Yes, really got to commend Herr Robert for that. What do you think Duro could do right now to try to win the game or deal a critical blow to Herr?
From Duro's perspective?
Yeah, for Duro, what would be a potential move to take Herr Robert out of the game?
I mean, at this point, it's very tough to say. He does have a Verflammen on the field on the bottom side, and therefore could go for some crazy Panzer IV play. I wouldn't say across the open on the bottom side. I would say probably through the middle would be the best place to probably try and do that. But pushing through the middle on any map is never really a good idea, because it just leaves your flanks vulnerable on 2 sides, right? I think in most cases, if you're on the back foot, pushing next to the edge of the map is always the best place to be, because then you can control which flanks are exposed. So I don't know, he's kind of just lost the momentum on the top side, so you can't really just continue throwing like Panzer IVs into that, although that's what Duro's going to do. He needs to kind of just change tack and find a hole in the line, but Herr Robert's had so much time now to build up and has the M4A176s in position, supported by M1 guns. Panzer IVs can't do anything. Like, as soon as the last King Tiger goes down, I said it earlier, there's not much more the 21st can do against the 3rd Armoured, in my opinion.
Yeah. Would you say that the 21st Panzer Division, to some extent, is a one-trick pony in that regard, or is there something else that could carry the 21st Panzer Division in terms of its deck composition?
I'm not terribly familiar with the 21st Panzer. I haven't had massive success with it, but yeah, it is definitely very reliable reliant on their King Tigers, like, for sure. Their artillery is pretty strong. They do have a great mix of artillery. For example, these like 150mm Lorraines that they have, like, these things are great. And I think, like, maybe having the investment in artillery earlier on with the radios in position would be nice to see, because he does have the Battlefielders, right, and they have radios, and he's had them in from Phase A, but we didn't really see the investment in artillery to accompany those straight away. So he ended up kind of falling into his own strategy. Like, it was kind of like he brought in infantry with the Battlefielders as his command, and then he ended up getting RT'd instead of like the other way around. So I think that's one way you can definitely do things. You can have the artillery support your infantry to make a bit more of an infantry play. But the King Tigers are definitely a large part of your strategy, and without those, you lose a lot of armor pressure, or like anti-armor pressure, I guess. But we do see the Werflamme come in with the rocket strike. That actually went for the flag on the bottom, where this Focke-Wulf's just coming in to strafe. He's going to strafe the rifles to push that front line back, and he's going to capture that flag briefly, but maybe not for too long.
Yeah. Speaking to sort of Duro's potential moves that they could have done, you know, kick Herr Robert out of the game earlier. I think in the center, when we talked about, I think it was around, it was in Phase A, maybe it was like end of Phase E or start of end of Phase A, start of Phase B, is that Duro had a very large infantry force in that central town, in that valley up in the north. And it was basically held down by a little bit of artillery and a single machine gun or something like that, and a single squad of infantry. Maybe Duro could have finalized their gains, or maybe secured the town and really given themselves a central foothold there. But maybe Duro was just, as you said, started falling into the trap of, you know, I must commit to my specific strategy of, okay, focusing on the Tiger 2s kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very reactionary game from both players. There's not been any like decisive pushes. It's I mean, except from the initial deployment, we've only seen players like reacting to each other. So for example, like again, Herr Robert has like all of these tanks up in this top side. They're just sitting there being RT'd. The same thing happened for the King Tiger. It like for a lot of this game, the King Tiger did just sit there and get RT'd. You can see the amount of craters around one of the wrecks of the King Tiger. Like it was just in the same place the whole time, and like not having that aggression sometimes is like a real detriment to like what you're trying to do. And again, like Duro, like you mentioned, with all of that infantry in the town, in the valley, the pioneers could still easily move forwards and wreck these armored rifles and armored infantry rifles. You know, there's still room to be made here. If he brings in a couple more infantry, but he's just been flooding stuff in piecemeal to the top side, and it's just been slowly dying, again being reactionary rather than you know, actually trying to find weaknesses in the line, because it's actually very difficult right now for Herr Robert, or for Duro, sorry, to push onto the flag on the top side of the hill, as opposed to the one in the valley. Like the one in the valley is pretty much undefended. Obviously he doesn't know that unless he brings in some recon or something that can maybe spot the armor. But yeah, it's just odd to me. He needs to definitely do a lot more work if he's going to put that much infantry into the town. And there was a lot of flags that I feel he could have been controlling right now that he just isn't, because of the lack of the aggression early on. Although he is 14-10 again, and Herr Robert is still bleeding tickets. So, well, Duro finding space here and there.
Yeah, I do feel it's basically sort of the final grasp of someone who's just trying to sort of find that slight edge just to put more pressure on their opponent. But I think that Herr Robert more or less has the game under control here, because I'm seeing sort of from an overview, Duro has been losing Panzer IVs left and right, especially in the center. They've been taken down by artillery. They've been taken down by a lot of the anti-tank guns that Herr Robert has laid down on that central hill. So these Panzer Grenadier squads that have been sneaking up to reclaim the flags, I feel that's more of a last-minute attempt kind of thing, or the death throes of Duro, rather than a part of a concerted effort or strategy.
Yeah, exactly. He's just been probing into areas where Herr Robert's now lacking infantry. I think Herr Robert's infantry availability is really, really low now, and he's just going to be ending up throwing tanks at the front line, which then Duro's going to suffer really badly for, because he's not going to have many tanks left himself. Although we are still seeing more and more Panzer IVs coming in, but they're still dying.
This time the G variant.
Yeah, he's back down to the G variants. I think that the G variants he probably had earlier on, and unless he's got like a card of them in Phase C just for, you know, long games like this, potentially. But Nice engagement there between the P-47 and Focke-Wulf. Neither goes down, but and both are actually gonna, yeah, they're gonna get away. The AA not doing the trick either. Yeah, I think honestly, Duro is kind of sealing his own fate here because, like, although he's killed a lot of Herr Robert's infantry, like I said, it's going to get to the point where all Herr Robert needs to do right now is select all his units and give a hunt order to the spawn, and he'll win the game. But we're just not seeing it yet. Pack 38 does manage to get a cheeky kill onto this M4, I would assume, on the bottom side.
Yeah, very shortly. Yep, down it goes. What do you think Herr Robert's waiting for? You know, looking at the density of Duro's units versus Herr Robert probably has maybe like a 10 to 20% greater density of units compared to Duro. What do you think Herr Robert's waiting for?
Oh, I always ask myself the same thing when I watch Herr Robert. It's just a lack of recon. A lot of people in Steel Division think that recon is not as valuable, and I would agree, but it's still useful for spotting armor specifically, especially at longer ranges, and AT guns. Those are the two main things that, like, recon's great for. And otherwise, you're just gonna have to send something like a jumbo to go and bait the AT guns. But like in a game like this, when it's two decent players, they're going to be using return fire for the most part. This Pack 38 got caught out because it killed the M4.
And that airplane just got deleted.
Yeah, the strafing run there did the job, but he paid for it with his life. The nice suicide run there. The SDK Z71's frontal on right now. That's just so damn strong. But again, AT gun down. Like, if I saw the AT gun down, like I don't know if it's just like the pressure of the game. Like, I don't play competitively very often, but if I saw the AT gun had just died, I would probably attack move my jumbo straight up the middle. I would probably put my M4A176 on the hill on the bottom side, and then just carry on, right? And then you'd easily realize there's nothing there, like, because nothing would be firing at you, you know. And if it does start firing at you, your jumbo's at least going to tank a few shots. It's going to give you time to arty stuff. You know, you've got time to work with, but again, it's just nothing happening. He's waiting for the engineers to walk forwards, which are just going to bump into infantry, which isn't going to expose AT anyway. So all that Herr Robert's going to end up doing here is end up like walking his engineers forwards. They're going to get hit by the MGs. He's going to go, oh, there's defences there, and then not move forwards his tanks. So we're going to be sat here for another 5 minutes waiting for this tank push to come through.
Yeah. Would you say maybe that there's a certain kind of conservative approach that Herr Robert's been taking, especially relying on the artillery? Maybe it's Herr Robert's reliance on the artillery sort of makes creates this notion of oh, you know what, I'm really good with artillery, therefore I'm going to go with a very slow build-up style, and therefore I will be very careful, super cautious in attacking. Do you think there's something to...
I think it's just more mind games on the side of Herr Robert. I don't think it's necessarily a strategy for him to... Like, I mean, the strategy to go RD heavy is certainly a thing, sure, but the fact that he is not as aggressive with his M4s is very strange to me. Like, he's got two M4s currently sitting in the middle with the AT gun, the M1 gun there. If they were assisting this M4A1 on the road, he could just pop both those Panzer 4s so easily right now. But they're not doing anything. Like, it's kind of strange. We do see like the M4s finally attack moving forwards on the bottom side, and I think he's going to realize now that there isn't anything defending. But Duro still holding a lead with 13-11. See, this shouldn't be happening in my opinion. With the amount of units we see on the field, there is no way that Duro should be able to hold like a capture lead. That is being too conservative. Like, this being conservative and then it's being too conservative.
I see.
Yeah, Duro on the bottom side here bringing in the two S07 packs. Unfortunately, against armored targets, they're just not that effective unless they can get an ambush. They do have the benefit of the extra aim time for being open top, but it's not really going to matter. They're completely blind now as well with the sight damage there.
Yeah. Yeah, there really isn't necessarily much to say here about, I think, tactics. It's mostly about, at this point, just waiting for the end of Duro, just bringing in the final units that they have, such as Brumbars, and as you just said, the S307 pack tank destroyers. It's just flailing almost to some extent, trying to make something happen with whatever resources you have.
I mean, there is only 11 minutes until Herr Robert loses. I mean, you never know, we might see a miracle, but the Panzer IV Gs here, killed I managed to kill another M4. The M4s have been whittled down on the top side. Again, Herr Robert's lack of aggression has allowed Duro to just get Panzer IVs back onto that hill. Now we see a bunch of them coming on the bottom side. But the M4s are finally just... look at this jumbo's actually moving. Holy shit. Like, maybe not far enough. I'm clicking on it, I'm looking at the order, I really want it to be further. Because this jumbo should be leading the charge, not the shitty M4s with 90 armor.
Yeah.
The Panzer IVs, yeah. It's got to a point now where Herr Robert's got to these trees, and he's not going to be flanking shot by anything, so... he's actually in a really, really nice position to just continuously lock down this flag on the bottom side. But again, it's still 12 to 12 due to Duro's build up, and now Duro's going to be making like a concerted effort in the middle, or in the middle, the top, I guess. In that town, he's moving his infantry forwards, but the artillery's coming in strong to just pin down all of that stuff.
Yep. In regards to the jumbos, there, I could have sworn they turned into Valentines because of how slow they were. But sort of aside from Herr Robert's caution, I think Duro did a relatively decent job in the far north here. Obviously, the central village seeing a bit of a push from Duro with the pioneers that they had there, but they just get artied to death. What I'm sort of referring to is the far northern section. Duro has finally been able to take that clump of woods just short of that flag, and was able to push Herr Robert back. But at this time, that there was so much fighting in that northern section that I think Herr Robert was basically able to, commit enough mental energy to keep track of that area, and that area has been sort of artied to death, and now Herr Robert is able to bring in reinforcements to reclaim the flag and maybe start another counterattack, or maybe just go for a defense. Hard to say, but well done on Duro's side, but maybe again a little bit too little too late at this point.
It's just lack of commitment, right? Like, you got like the M4A 176 here. Like that jumbo just took a double strafe from the Focke-Wulf 198s, which is why it's quite pinned down. But Duro managed to trade one of his Panzer IVs for an M4A3 or M4A1, sorry, 76, which is a really nice trade. But there was a second M4A1 that was just sat down the hill doing nothing at the time. So it's very strange to me that it's like, again, like sort of like a lack of commitment in general. These jumbos quite nicely at the front of the M4A1s on the bottom side now, so it did take a transmission damage probably from the Panzer IV, but it bailed out Panzer IV nice and easy. It's not going to go down to the Panzer IVs that like easily, so you can take those criticals and carry on, and that's what Herr Robert just needs to continue doing as another Panzer IV gets popped.
Yep, and the other Panzer IV-H is just going to try to run away and try to find a more sneaky position, or maybe get into cover, because at this Duro has basically been blood dry here. And we're just waiting here to the end. But again, we're seeing also another push in the north here. Duro's finally showing some movement in the northern section here. They tried in that central, or that village in the valley or something like that. But now Duro trying to push in to try to clear out some of these Sherman that Herr Robert's brought in. But Herr Robert has been, or has gotten so comfortable with their artillery. I think they know all the different positions now. They're able to counter Duro's any move here. So you could almost say that this game, holistically, has been a slow match of Herr Robert gaining control of the map.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I think Basically, if I was going up against 21st, I would look for those King Tiger kills, and I'm surprised. I would hope that Herr Robert identified that Duro only had 3 of them, and therefore would has not pushed for other reasons. I don't because I'm kind of getting the feeling that maybe he's expecting to bump into King Tigers at any moment, and then that's why he's maybe being a bit slow about it. But yeah, it's just
true.
very odd to me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I can definitely understand that mentality. While we were saying there, the Würfrahmen from Duro in the south got a really lucky kill with two direct hits on a jumbo, the one that got its transmission damaged. So that's one down. And in fact, talking or referring to your point about maybe Herr Robert being very cautious in their approach, that single kill of the jumbo has forced Herr Robert commanded their Shermans to pull back from a lot of ground that they've just gained from that single kill. So it might just be a sort of kind of mentality or a very particular strategy that Herr Robert has chosen to be extra careful.
I mean, in this case, he only got punished for it for his own orders. Like,
agreed.
It's very. I mean, he's got a lack of AA. Oh, sure. Like, you know, the Focke-Wulf 190s are just free strafing right now. But like the M4A1 is sitting there, like out of line of sight, way far back. You got an M4A1 that's currently sat in the light cover on the bottom side, doing absolutely nothing. If you had all of those ready to go at the same time, then you wouldn't have any problems like this. You would already be past this down. The Calliope is just going to be dealing with that Panzer IV, which is fine. That's exactly the sort of thing you want to see. And yeah, there would be no obstacle really for the M4. But I think falling back there just allowed Duro to pick off a few more Shermans than he probably should have. The Würflamens are generally quite accurate, so I'm not actually that surprised that it managed to kill off a tank. Maybe the fact that it was a jumbo is a bit surprising, but yeah, either way, yeah, Herr Robert's kind of shooting himself in the foot a lot during this game, and it is a little bit worrying.
Yeah. Do you think in this game both players have exhibited pretty good micro overall, or maybe this was more of a high level sort of macro control kind of game? What do you think?
It's definitely been more of a macro game, because there's been you got 2 M4A176s in the middle still doing nothing. Like there's a lot of tanks that are like sat behind the line, like on the town, for example. The M4A1 just sat right back. You've got an M4A1 sitting behind a Calliope even in the middle. Like there's so much like stuff that's not committed to like any form of defense or push that it's definitely more macro than micro, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's difficult for me to get my head around like what's going through their head. I mean, for Duro, it's pretty cut and dry. You know, I'm pretty sure Duro's almost resigned himself to losing the game after losing his King Tigers, and has just been, you know, trying his best to stay in the match for as long as he can, which is fair enough, and he's been doing a great job of it. You know, he's been sneaking some of these flags and actually being like relatively proactive, but at this point it looks like he's out of Panzer IVs. And otherwise we'd probably see more of them coming in. So it's only a matter of time until again Herr Robert selects all his units and attack moves towards the spawn, because that's literally all he needs to do right now.
Yes, indeed. In regards to sort of macro versus micro, I think I've noticed quite a few, I suppose you could say micro mistakes from either side. You know, specifically for Duro, losing the Tigers, not repositioning them fast enough, getting artillery to death. And from Herr Robert, there's also been a couple of micro mistakes as well. But clearly, for Herr Robert, they've chosen a division and chosen a play style that sort of, you could say, complements or supplements the lack of maybe superb micro kind of thing.
I mean, just look at this big old salient just open up on this bottom side. please, just a quick hunt down that road. Like, there is nothing there. It's literally, this is like a massive sign on the map saying, there is nothing here.
Go here.
Attack
go here.
me. Like, but again, there's still no movement. It's very, very slow. Very, very slow game.
Yeah.
But Herr Robert obviously will win over time. It's just a matter of like, please move forwards.
Yeah. It's very interesting to see that a 1v1 has come down to this, because in my experience, a lot of the 1v1s were sort of very like the longest ones that I've seen were maybe 40 to 45 minutes in length. For example, Eugen's games are sort of, they're long, but they're not incredibly long. They're not like team game long usually. But with 1v1s, what I have usually seen is knife fights and quick decisive maneuvers with someone claiming several key victory points and then holding on to them and then basically pushing forward here. Whereas if someone said to me that this was a sample of a team game, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, the team games often last a lot longer. But again, this M1 gun just sniped like 2 AA vehicles coming up that road for free, and nothing fired back at the M1 gun. Nothing. Like, there's one armored LMG rifle moving towards this town now. Yes, that's going to get hit by the Panzer Grens. Maybe the M4s don't want to move up there to go round, but that's going to be victory eventually after 68 minutes and 15 seconds. And I think Duro just like he ended the game. He was like, I've had enough of this. I can't stand this. Why is he not pushing? He's just taunting me. Like, what is he doing? Yeah. Duro just ran out of stuff to keep trying to fight back, and Herr Robert just takes it.
I think at about the 1 hour mark, actually, I noticed barely any movement from Duro. So I think at this point it was basically, all right, just like let the game run out quickly. Is Herr Robert going to do anything? I'd really love to either talk to Herr Robert or get in their head sort of within the match. What was going through Herr Robert's mind? Was it a true fear of more Tiger 2s throughout the entire match? Was it maybe Herr Robert's initial plan to go for such a long match and just sort of drain the enemy? Very, very interesting to figure out.
Yeah. So I'm just looking through the kills here. The mortar carries and the M7 kills are insane. There's just so much lovely kills from this artillery.
Yes, indeed.
There's also the AT gun somewhere that does have both of the King Tiger kills. That is superb. Good old Dyer there.
It was that one. Yeah. Wow, incredible positioning there.
Yeah, I guess they come in with 65 shells. I think it is, rather than 60. Yeah, loads and loads of kills early on. And then just that AT gun that was in that position up the main road just sniped all of the reinforcements. But yeah, before that, like, so much arty kills. Like, this is like when you see these M21 mortar carrier kills, like, that's what you push off. Like, it's again very weird. JU88 did a decent job. It got that double kill on the top side. Like, there were opportunities for Duro, but the artillery is what saved Herr Robert more than anything. Like, that artillery strategy. If that artillery hadn't been so on point, then Duro could have definitely had a lot more flexibility to make pushes in either the top side or the bottom side. The kills and losses are not even that different. It's just that the divisions themselves, like the 3rd Armoured, just has so much more to give when it comes to like that armoured units. Whereas the 21st, like as soon as the King Tigers run out, it's very difficult. You're playing around the Panzer IVs at close range against M4s, which are also good at close range, so you trade 1 for 1 and it becomes like that attritional battle. Herr Robert won the attritional battle but then didn't push for about 20 minutes, so like that was pretty much it.
Yep, that's a great summary of the match.
So yeah, that was the first game of round 2 for the Throwback tournament of Steel Division. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you once again to Primus Palace for helping me out.
Thank you, Vulcan, for inviting me to co-cast.
Yeah, hopefully we'll do more of these in the future. That's it.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
See you later.